I think we are live, Tal. You'll let me know if there's any issues behind the scenes. Facebook and YouTube should be up and running right now. Welcome everybody to Rubbing Elbows. As usual, Thursday, 2 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in, or if you're watching this later, hopefully you'll get some extra valuable information today. We have a guest speaker that is going to be sharing some valuable information. We talked briefly earlier, and I took away some really good ideas, and he'll be sharing it with you guys today with regards to how to present your properties, loopholes for ADUs and things of that nature. So, Chuck, why don't you introduce our guest speaker of the week?
Okay, so we've got with us today super mega architect, president of Dialectic Architecture. He's got his master's in architecture from USC, and we're going to be chatting with him about all types of things, especially ADU loopholes that a lot of us want to know more about. So welcome, Victor. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Let's see. Let me.
So first question we always like to ask, and we always hear interesting stories is, how and why you got into what you do today.
Well, I actually started doing art. I went art school, made my parents proud, but eventually they said everything I did was architectural. So guess I ended up doing architecture. And so I've been doing it for 15 years. I loved it. It's the thing I love the most. And then I also do real estate investment as well. And the way I got into that is that around 2013, I bought a Craftsman in Highland Park. And I got it right at the time I was supposed to get it. Spent a good amount of time restoring it and making it look beautiful. And then I think when I sold it, it sold for one of the highest prices in Highland Park at the time. So I was like, wow, this is really, really fun. So I do both architecture, design, and as well as some investment.
Very nice, beautiful. So I'm going to jump right into it. We won't get into the whole COVID questions and all that. Maybe if we have time, we'll do that later. But I know you have a lot of, useful information that I just want to jump right into. Now, realtors and even developers, they're always looking for an advantage and a way to differentiate ourselves from the competition. And how do we give additional value? How do we become more of a resource? And I think a lot of us miss on the opportunity of some of the loopholes that building and safety allow us to do with the properties. And I would like for you, if you could share some of the strategies, tricks, tips on what people can do with any standard property to, first of all, highlight it to be more of an income producing property. And then also with regards to the ADU, so that the property can potentially be presented in a more valuable way and separating us from the competition.
Yeah. So I have two ways in which I usually, what you want to do is be able to use your knowledge to leverage your investment to be able to make it more valuable. I think a lot of it, it's like with the saying is you make the money on the buy. In other words, getting a good deal on a property, but also knowing exactly what to look for is really, really important. And I think the way, at least I've been looking at it right now with future investments, is knowing the zoning, taking advantage of, I wouldn't call the ADU laws loopholes. They're just laws, and knowing exactly how they work and being well-rounded in them can help you when you look at a property and being like, oh, I could go into this property and it has room enough to put 2 or 3 ADUs in a multifamily property. If you know that 25% of the existing units can be added as ADUs if you actually have the room within the multifamily complex to do it. So yeah, you can have a possible complex of 12 units and you can have 3 ADUs built in that. Or knowing that if you have the room, so for example, what's gone now with the ADU process is that the state came in on January 1st, 2020, and totally brought in a new set of ADU laws that allow you to build not only an ADU, but a junior ADU, and it allowed you to build ADUs in multifamily properties, which wasn't.
Do you mind actually jumping in on the junior ADU, because a lot of people don't even know that exists, and that's something that's huge. It's useful. You can turn a single family now into 3 units. Can you talk about that very briefly? What a junior ADU or junior suite is?
Yeah. So in essence, single family zoning is dead in California. Um, you can still build a single home and a single lot, but because of the new laws, it allows you to build a junior ADU, which is around limited to around like I think in LA is like around 500 square feet, and you can build an ADU, which in LA is limited to 1,200 square feet. So you can build 2 units up to 1,700 square feet combined, on top of the existing residence that you have. And that gives almost every single family plot of land in California an ability to be a triplex. And with I think 1,200 square feet, you can get 3 bedroom, 2 bath. If you want to squeeze it, you can get 4 bedroom, 3 bath. And usually your junior ADU will be a 1 bedroom, 1 bath. And then your home can be whatever it can be, as long as it meets residential floor area requirements in LA or any other kind of floor area limitations in anywhere else in California. But yeah, any property you can do into a triplex. That's anywhere in California. In such cities as Burbank and Glendale, you couldn't even build anything above 600 square feet a year ago. Now you can just point to the state law and be like, hey, this is what the state law allows me to do, and they can't do anything about it. It's also ministerial, which means there has to be no meeting it with community meetings or anything like that. It has to be approved over the counter in essence, and therefore they have a limitation that they have to approve it within 60 days of your application. So they can't just drag their feet on a lot of these things. Like the laws have been very, very good. And the thing about it is, like, everybody knows that you can do an ADU. They just don't know the ins and outs of how you can do it and how you can take advantage. The other interesting thing is that there's no parking replacement for ADUs. So in other words, if you convert the garage or you demolish it in order to make an ADU, you don't have to replace those parking spots. And if you're within half a mile of a public transit area, like a bus stop, you don't even have to provide parking for the ADU. So there's, I have a couple of clients that they do multifamily, and they have all these garages that were built in the 50s that nobody uses anymore because they can't even fit cars. Some of them you can fit 2 ADUs in them, and we convert them to 2 ADUs. And the county, by the way, doesn't even have its ordinance up in place. So they have to use the state laws, and that's a good thing. So sometimes it's even better with some of these, in some places like LA, they have an ADU ordinance, so they can try to limit certain things to go within the LA zoning requirements, but LA County doesn't have their ADU ordinance up in place. So they have to go by the state, and the state is very vague.
Let me make sure I get this right. So I can find a single family home, let's say in a hot area like NoHo, very old rundown house with a very tiny garage, 7,000 square feet. I can buy that property, and then I can convert the old garage into, let's say, a junior ADU, build another 1,200 square foot ADU. Each one of these will have a separate address. Is that right? And a separate meter?
Well, no. The junior ADU has to be part and attached to the single family home. So
Okay.
Here's how you get around it. So you can convert that garage and then add, say it's a 2-car garage, 400 square feet, add another 800 square feet to that, make that your 1,200 square foot ADU. Then the way you get around a junior ADU is that you have to grab existing habitable square footage from the home. So if you want to max out your home and your junior ADU and your ADU, you max out the home's RFA as an addition. Then you come back and you grab the 500 square feet to do the junior ADU.
So the
Right, so you
junior
have to keep
ADU
that.
doesn't even go into the RFA, not into the existing single family limits. It's in addition to.
Well, it's the way they limit the size of it is, and the location is by saying it has to, you basically have to carve it out of the existing square footage in the single family residence. Right?
Got
So all right, give you an example. You find a 1,200 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, rundown, right? In a 5,000 square foot lot, that gives you around 2,250 square footage to build. So you have an extra 1,000 square feet to build, right?
Right.
So then you max out your ADU, and then you carve out part of your existing residence to do a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. So you could theoretically end up with a 3-2, a 1-1, and then another 3-2. So you have 7-bedroom, what is it? 7-bedroom, 5-bath
4.5, 5 bath
triplex. Yeah,
on a
7-bedroom
5,000 square foot lot.
on a 5,000 square foot lot. And then you can rent it out. You got 3 forms of income. You're basically doubling the size of your home. So you have 1 3-bedroom, 2-bath, another 3-bedroom, 2-bath behind it. So yeah, you can for buy and hold investors, that's the best way to do it. If you're like, hey, I want to find properties where I want to be able to come in and pay the price of a single family residence, I'm willing to put in the money to build this, but I have 3 units when I'm done. You can do that. But if you're a flipper, then I would consider, then you have to go more by the market. So for example, there's certain areas like East Hollywood where you can't come in, do the triplex and then sell it to an investor. But say areas like West LA, where it's a lot of single family residences, you might be spending too much money because your client or the person you're going to sell it to, your target market might not want a triplex. They might want a single family residence with a little ADU in the back that they can either rent out for income, or they can use as an office, or for their parents and in-laws or kids to move into. So you have to like really be able to realize that there's a lot of things you can do, but look at the market, look at where you're buying, look at the money you're putting into this, look at the money you're willing to put into this, and look at the end game. And then there's different kinds of ADUs that you can use, either conversions or new construction, that'll get you to that end so you can maximize your profit.
Got it. So here's an idea that I'm thinking of, and I want to get your opinion on it, right? If I'm, let's say, I'm in lending, but if I was a realtor and I have a client that wants to sell their home, and I'm competing against a whole bunch of other realtors, or I want to be able to show the customer how I can maximize what they'll receive. How easy is it to get plans set up and approved for the ADU and the garage conversion, and the junior ADU, I should say, and then how much value does that add to the property just by having approved plans without actually executing, from your experience? Would that be a smart play for somebody that's going to, should do a listing presentation?
So value add is most profitable the harder it is to approve something. So for example, from my understanding with talking with real estate agents, the best thing to do is to actually build the ADU, but don't demolish the garage if it's a usable garage, because that's the best of both worlds. To have a garage, 2-car garage, everybody loves 2-car garages. You have a workbench, you can do whatever you want to do. Storage is key. You can never have too much storage. So then it's better to build an ADU. Junior ADUs, it's worth doing it, but remember that this is where we get into the conversation of what your target market is.
Right.
Whether they're going to be buy and hold investors or you're flipping to maximize profit. I think if you ask me, because it's actually pretty easy to put in plans through the city for ADU conversions, you can do it online. You don't even have to show up anymore. And it's almost like an extended counter plan check process, which before COVID would probably take you a couple of weeks. During COVID takes you like about a month or 2. So it's pretty simple. It's cost effective. I don't know if it adds that much value if it isn't actually built. So for somebody that's actually saying, I want to sell this property and maximize value, go ahead and actually build an ADU. It's you know, a garage conversion can run you around $70,000 to $80,000, but the value it adds is way more than that, or even a new construction. Definitely go to the ADU because it's one of the most effective ways to build value, and people will be more than happy to walk in and be like, oh, you have a back house, I could rent it out, I could do all of this. So having it now, value add is better in situations like small lot subdivisions or places where you have to go through planning, where it takes 2 or 3 years to get things approved, and no developer wants to have a plot of land and have themselves tied 2 or 3 years in the planning process while everything's getting figured out. That's where it benefits to have a set of plans with a development already set up, so that a developer could buy that with the set of plans and then just start building and then selling. So that value add works in that direction better.
So Victor, that was actually going to be my next question. Is I see what Lior is asking for realtors, but obviously we've teamed up with the Los Angeles Real Estate Investors Club. We have a lot of investors that are tuning in. That's how we actually met. You're a vendor with them as well. So for investors, for the investor side, what is the timeline of getting an ADU approved? Whether if it's a garage conversion with an 800 square foot addition, your typical, adding to a 400 square foot 2-car garage. What's the timeline on that?
So let me see. If you're going through the ECPC process, which is, if you're doing a simple garage conversion, you could, even now, you could probably do it in about a month to get it approved. Simple garage conversions. If you have more, like if you're adding more than 500 square feet, you're going to get into something called low impact development. And when you do low impact development, right now you're looking at like almost a month tacked on into that process. Because before COVID, you could go to the city, get a low impact development over the counter review. They give you your CNA, which you have to actually go to the county to submit. And then back then you could do it in a day and you could get approved in a day. Now it's taking a month or 2 months to do that whole process. So the best and easiest thing is definitely the conversions. The conversions are fast. The garage conversions are really fast. You can get them done for like $80,000 for a 2-car garage. And then you can get them approved probably in about a month or so. And so if you're just, hey, I want to spend the least amount of time and get the most value for my buck, go do a garage conversion, and just do that. Don't worry about the parking. Most places that have a garage in the back have a long driveway, and people don't even use those garages. They don't mind parking in the driveway. What you can also do is what some people are doing right now is that rather than leaving the 10-foot driveway, they permit everything and then afterward add some concrete on the side so people can actually park 2 cars in the driveway. It's not legal, but you can park in you can park wherever you want to park in your house, right? But those are things that people are doing to kind of add value to that. Adding more habitable space, like larger ADUs, it's worth it if you're in a longer term kind of investment. Or like if you're a buy and hold investor, because you know that what you're adding will eventually come back to you in rent.
So at some point there were rumors that ADUs may be going away, that too many of them were coming into the city, applications were just getting backed up. Have you heard anything about ADUs going away? Do you have any opinion on ADUs going away at some point?
So the way it's done here in California and the way it's done, especially in LA, is they want to densify. So that's what you want to actually take into account. That's why they have stuff like transit-oriented communities, small lot subdivisions, and ADUs. They've come to understand over the longer term that LA is too spread out, and therefore they are incentivizing densification. And so that's why all of these laws are coming into place that you as a developer and as an investor need to take advantage of. And a lot of developers and investors, that's their focus, right? Like there's specific people that go out and look out, that, go out and find properties that are prime for ADUs, right? So you go in a house and you're like, wow, there's a big backyard. There's enough for me to put in an ADU and still have a lawn and maybe still have a garage. Then this is a better property than something that doesn't have an ability to put in an ADU. But then there's also other investors that now specialize in something called small lot subdivision, where they go in and you can subdivide a piece of land, and the smallest subdivision you can do is like 800 square feet. And so they specialize in finding larger tracts of land with multifamily, the RD delineation, the zoning, and figuring out how they can split it up. And now that's why you're seeing all these small lots. Then there's, the developers that are specializing in TOC, which find really good properties that you can, increase the number of units in there. So I think that's why I don't think it's going away. The long-term plan for LA is to be more dense. And there's, when it comes to affordable homes, the thing about affordable homes and ADUs is that it's a low entry. So it's not only developers and investors, it's homeowners that are looking. So they refinance their home, and then they can come out with like $150,000, $200,000 and get a 2-bedroom in the back of their home, and they can rent them out or whatever. So it's a low entry point for a lot of people. I don't think it's going away.
Let me ask you this: for some of the investors that listen to this, what would you suggest for them to, let's say I've got a property that I'm about to close on, I'm already doing my due diligence. Do I want to bring in someone like yourself, okay?
Mm-hmm.
To come in, take a look, tell me, okay, yes, you can convert this 400 square foot garage, add another 800, and basically have a 1,200 square foot ADU, and let's say whatever the existing square footage of the house, right? How do you go about taking on a new client? Is it a retainer? Is it a flat fee? Is it something that we can expect to just, share your information with people in the group here and say, yeah, next time you're, dealing with an ADU, reach out to Victor. This is what he charges. How does that work?
So there's 3 ways that I normally work. I'm very flexible. It's also because I've done investment before, so I understand everybody's got a different business model. So when it comes to ADUs, there's 3 ways I normally work. The first way is that if it's simple, right, just give me a call. My phone number is 626-375-2873. If it's in LA City, I could just pull up the ZMAs, look at it through Google Maps, and kind of give you an idea of what you can do. I don't mind. It doesn't take me that long time. And I'm willing to help out people like that. Just so you can know, but don't call me like 20 times with 20 different kinds of properties, because then I'll be like, come on. You got to learn these laws yourself. You got to know the basics of them at least.
A lot of the guys here that would be calling you would know the basics, would know that, okay, I've got a 7,000 lot with a small little fixer on it. I can definitely do an ADU. The question is, to have these plans done, what do you charge to have the plans done for a conversion in addition, something like that?
So most of my my billing, so for conversions, depending on the size, but usually like a small like garage conversion, I usually charge about 3,000.
Okay.
Like the typical one, and that gets you the plans. It gets you all like everything you need to submit to get a permit. Anything above that is done by square footage. And so there's 2 ways I work. And then one, if you know what you want and we talk about it and I figure out exactly what you want, then you can hire me, you put me in a retainer, and then just put it in the process of getting it done. Conversions are pretty quick. I usually get it back to you in a couple of weeks. But if you're still trying to figure out what's the best way, I'm working on this with a developer in Studio City, where I can actually do a feasibility study. And so I do different options. Like if you're going to do this, if you're going to do this, if you're going to do this, balancing out time and cost. So you can get an idea of like, okay, when it comes to ADUs, junior ADUs, all of this, I have my 4 or 5 options. And then you can then crunch the numbers and figure out exactly what benefits you the most. So I'm doing that with a couple of clients just because they want to know exactly what all their different options are. But if you're more, hey, Victor, I'm calling you, I have a garage in the back and I want to maximize it to 1,200 square feet. What are some of the issues? Then yeah, I can just, give you a price once I figure out exactly what you want to build. And it's done by square footage. I don't have like set timetables. So if it's like 1,000 square foot, it's going to be less than 1,200 square foot. And then if I'm doing a renovation, it's usually a renovation or conversion. It's half the price of new construction. But yeah, I mean, things to look out for too, whenever you're doing ADUs, power lines. If you have an LADWP easement, that you're at 2 months before they can even approve that.
Same issue with doing pools.
Yeah. If you're within 10 feet of an easement, even the small conversions, if they have to go through LADWP, you're looking at 2 months.
And is it true that most corner lots sometimes don't even have an easement?
Really, there's no single rule about it. It's just
hit or
you got to
miss.
look at ZEMAs and you got to look at an easement. Also, if you have a power pole on your property, you have to keep a 5-foot setback rather than a 4-foot setback. But the moment you get LEDWP, it like affects your
Timeline
how
and
quickly.
everything.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what I'm doing right now with another client. So right now I have a client that I'm doing a multifamily developer. I'm doing about 10 or so ADU conversions. And they have like around 60 properties. So what they actually did is they sent me a list of like 30 properties, and I went through all of them and I picked out the 10 or so that are the easiest and fastest to do because they want to focus on those. And then those are the ones I gave them proposals for, and those are the ones we're working on. So there's a lot of things you got to look into this. Like, are they close to power lines, right? Do I have the space? It's obviously, if it's attached versus detached, it might get into a little bit more complicated because you're going into existing space. And the other thing, do I have some weird overlay? So for example, in South LA, you have something called CPIO, and the CPIO planner doesn't believe that you can do attached ADUs on certain sub areas, which is wrong. But even though he's wrong, he's not going to admit it, and you have to fight him on it, and you might have to bring the state in to fight him on it. Mm-hmm. So, you got to look at all of the things that affect your property. The other thing you want to do, which a lot of people make the mistake of doing, is thinking that this is easier than what it is. So I had somebody who was a client, he bought a multifamily property, and there was already a converted garage. And so he went in, and then he's like, okay, he went in and did the plans himself and went into the city. And then the city came back, corrections up the wazoo. And then he calls me and I'm like, I need somebody to fix this. What's going on? Well, the garage was illegally converted and it was made bigger than the original garage. So now that's actually a conversion and an addition of square footage. So it's more complicated, and you have to change the drawings up to reflect that. And he didn't know that. They just think, oh, I'm just going to put in the drawings and a month later I'm going to get it. But no, you have to do permit research as well and figure out what's there, what's not. Just another tidbit. I think yesterday I was in LA County, and LA County came back with one conversion. It's an L-shaped garage that I'm doing into 2 ADUs. And they're like, well, there's an illegal addition to this garage. And we sent them the slips, the permit slips. And then you just have to look through the permit slips, and we found it right there. It's a legal addition. So, there's all these little kind of intricacies to these things. They're not as simple as you think they are.
Yeah. But, so let me ask you on that note right there. If there's obviously ways that you can find out some of the basic information. And if somebody just wants to figure out some of the basic things, let's say, for example, Chuck brings you an opportunity for a property. and you want to very quickly analyze what could be done with it, what is your go-to tools or apps or websites that can give you a lot of that information? What can you tell people to go and try?
So there's two places where you should go whenever you're researching any property. One is Zimas. I don't know if anybody, it's its own image mapping something service, which is the online mapping service for zoning in the city of LA. So actually I lied, there's three. One is Zimas, brings up everything. You'll see all the easements and everything that affects your property. It has a little outline of your property.
You can even
take
use like
dimensions.
measure, right? You can like measure exact sizes on there and everything, right?
It's completely wrong. Don't go by that. But
Okay.
it gives you an idea. No, to be honest, yeah. Sometimes it's like, oh, you got 10 feet and you only have like 6. And it's they got people who just to trace over Google Earth. So it's not very accurate.
Okay.
But it gives you all your property information. You can see all the overlays. You can see the zoning. You can see if you have a queue condition, all of that kind of stuff. And then two, there's something called the Los Angeles zoning code summary, which is like 2 or 3 pages, which shows you all your height limitations, setbacks, and all of that. And then the third is on the and then the third is the LADBS has the permit records, and all their permit records are online now. So you don't have to go to downtown and ask for them. You can go in there and see all the permits going back to whenever. Now, some properties weren't part of LA City when they first started, so you might have to go to the county assessors to get any permits they might have. But if you can find a permit and it shows everything that's legal there, and especially if you're buying a property that has something illegally converted, you want to make sure that the square footage that it has matches the existing permit, or else you have to treat it as a new addition, and they're going to treat it, the construction, as a new addition, so you're going to have to open up walls. And that's the other thing I want to talk about, so people understand when you're looking at to do a conversion. It is very important because this affects cost. Are your roof rafters 2x10 or 2x8s? A lot of these garages have 2x4 roof rafters, which means you're going to have to reinforce the roof or the ceiling. So keep that into account.
Just happened to my neighbor. They were halfway in. Inspector came, said, nope, got to change the whole roof.
Yep, you have to change the whole roof. The other thing is the foundation. Now, there is a guide. LA City has a guide on converting garages. You just got to look it up in Google. Search for that guide, and it shows you everything that they require. In the guide, it says that your foundations has to be at least a foot deep. And they should be reinforced concrete foundations. So that's really, really important, because if you have to redo foundations, this takes you from like 80,000 to probably 120,000 for a simple garage conversion. That happened to a project I'm doing right now in Pasadena, where the foundation is brick. Because all these old Pasadena houses, the Craftsman's, have a brick foundation. Mm-hmm. So you have to redo it. There's no if, and, or buts. There's not going to be approved. And then finally, the garage. So then the other one, here's another issue that I had to deal with another ADU. If you're in a flood zone or a methane zone, you can't build slab on grade. So if your garage is slab on grade, when you're making it habitable, you will have to do a raised foundation. So if you're coming into a project and you're like, okay, I'm looking to buy this home, I want to do a conversion ADU just because it's the cheapest thing. Say you're a flipper, you're coming in, you want to, just paint, redo the bathrooms and kitchen. You see that it has a garage, and you're looking at it, and it's like, oh, slab on grade, everything looks good. Make sure that it has rafters or ceiling joists that are 8 or 10 bys. That doesn't add that much cost, to be honest with you. Look at the foundation. If you have to dig a hole to make sure it's 1 foot, look at it, because at a certain point, if you have to redo the foundation and framing and all of these different kind of things, then it's easier just to build brand new. You know, at a certain, like, leave the garage there, and it's almost like $10,000 or $20,000 more just to build a brand new. And when you build brand new, you can probably build a 1-bedroom, which rents out for more. That's another important thing that I have a video that I want to come out and is that sometimes, yes, the cheapest thing to do is to convert the garage. But remember, a garage conversion only gets you 1 bedroom. I'm sorry, not a 1 bedroom, a studio. Yeah, sometimes it's worth it adding the $20,000 to $30,000 to add the square footage to turn it into a true 1 bedroom. Depends on the area. So, for example, in West LA, there's almost like an $800 to $1,000 rent difference between a 1 bedroom and a studio. So think about it. You spend $30,000, but you're getting $1,000 a month. This thing pays itself off in a few
Right.
years,
Right.
and then you got the rest of the time to make your profit. So you're looking at several $100,000 over the lifespan on this way of profit. But in certain other areas, like say Highland Park, there isn't that much of a difference between studios and 1 bedrooms. I don't know why. Do your due diligence. So it's not worth copping up that extra money. But like I said, just, you know, it's an on the ground decision that you got to figure out. Like, do I convert? Do I do new construction, or do I add? Because some of these little things, it's not that much money in some places, and it's worth it to go the extra mile to make it nice.
Yeah.
Tell me, what is it that you charge like a foot when you were saying it's about 3,000, anything over you're charging per foot. So what would it be for an additional 800 square feet? I'm just thinking of the biggest conversion addition for an ADU.
So, I mean, I'll just give you my prices. I usually charge $15 a square foot new construction. Half that goes into conversions. Like if it's a conversion, I charge half that. And then I charge like a dollar for like as-built. So usually what I do is I say, okay, you're building a 1,200 square foot ADU. So it's going to be 800 square feet of new construction, 400 square feet of conversion or renovation, and I just tabulated. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty good. Even when I do my estimating, I give you my prices, so you know that you're being charged. Because you know some architects will they charge different people differently, and some architects charge like construction costs. I would avoid that. I charge by square footage because that's just the amount of work that takes to get that done.
Do you have your own crews or like a preferred builder or thing, like if somebody wanted like A to Z one-stop shop, Victor, give me an estimate, one-stop shop, everything included, plans, permits, building, material, cost, labor, everything?
Well, that's another thing with the one-stop shop guys. And what I would say is that, you know, people like the one-stop shop, but remember, one-stop shop means that you're not hiring the architect. The contractor's hiring the architect. So the architect answers to the contractor, doesn't answer to you. Plus, you can't bid it out to whoever you want to build it. So trust me, I've worked with one-stop shop guys, because really all one-stop shop guys do is they go and hire an architect, right? And then
more so on the flip side, like if somebody came to you, hired you as an architect, and they, you know, they don't have a contractor, they don't have you know, subcontractors, would they be able to go through you and have you kind of manage it in a sense where you can help them also get a budget for the project and for the development itself?
Oh yeah, I have contractors I work with, and because I feed them projects, I can bring them in early, and they give me estimates for construction, even as early as like the preliminary stages. So, you know, I normally do like preliminary plans just to see if that's what you want. At that point, I can bring in one of my contractors, and they can give you an estimate, because I have a working relationship with all of them. But when it comes down to getting the full set of drawings, you don't have to use them.
Yeah.
So like at that point, you could use them, and I have a contractor that does more nicer stuff, and I have a contractor that just gets it done right, but more affordably. But you're not tied by them, which I feel is actually the fairest thing to do to a customer,
Right.
because you're not hiring for this whole thing, and you have control of it. So you can hire me, pay me for what I did, have a permitted set of drawings, and then you can bid it out to your own contractors if you choose so, or you can use one of my contractors. You have the
Yeah.
power to be able to always at any point, get this completed. And I like working with my contractors because we have a working relationship. So they can call me up, they have questions and all of that. If you would like, I also do construction management services, working with a contractor, picking finishes and all of that. But that is extra. Usually for full architectural services, you get the set of drawings. The contractor, I can work with you to pick a contractor. And then when it's under construction, I can answer questions and clarifications. But that's different than like me being on site and sort of managing the project. At that point, you should have a good contractor that effectively manages the project correctly, so that they aren't dumping things off on you. And my contractors do that. Like, they don't dump off things. They come to me. They know how to work correctly with me, so that there's no questions or
Yeah, that's why the
miscommunication.
owner representative business is so big, because it keeps everybody in good communication with one another. I do want to open it up here to questions in a second. I do have one final very quick question that you can probably just give me a yes or no answer on. But can you do an addition to an existing ADU?
Is it 1,200?
No, let's say it's under the 12. So let's say you want to build 1,200, but you're just going to start with a garage conversion and you'll add to it later. Can you do that?
Yeah, my understanding is you can. I mean,
Okay.
I've never had that question asked me, but your ADU max can be 1,200. So, and yeah, you can do a garage conversion and an addition to it. So you can do an addition to an ADU,
Okay.
as long as
Very
you
good.
keep it under 1,200. Or wait, as long as also you're within RFA, residential floor area.
Got it. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and allow for you guys to unmute yourselves. Give me 1 second here. And if anybody has questions, just go ahead, unmute and introduce yourself and ask your question. All right, everybody can unmute now. So if anybody has a question, go ahead and unmute. And Tal, if you see anybody on social media asking any questions, just chat me in private. And before we get to the first question, somebody did put in the chat. Can you give your phone number again? I'll put it in the chat for everyone, Victor.
Oh, 626-375-2873.
2873. And what's your email?
Dialecticarch@gmail.com. So it's dialecticarch@gmail.com.
Okay. All right, very good. Questions? Anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Roman.
Hi, Victor, thank you for the presentation. A lot of really good information. You mentioned that on a garage conversion, you can only get a studio out of it. Some garages are pretty big. You can get up to 600 square feet. You could configure that as for a one bedroom. Is there a code that says that you can't make that into a one bedroom, or is just for practical purposes, it's hard?
Usually, yeah, most garages in Southern California are 2-car garages, 400 square foot. But yes, if you have so here's where I want to kind of talk a little bit about knowing the ins and outs. If the garage is in multifamily, there is two, because usually the bigger garages are in multifamilies. But there's two stipulations that the California code brings in. One, you can have an ADU as long as if you take on an existing habitable space, an unused space, which includes garages. But you can only either do 1 or 25% of the existing units. So, but there's another part of the code right next to it, section D as opposed to C, which says you can do in any multifamily, you can do 2 ADUs as long as it's 16-foot maximum height and it has a 4-foot rear and back, like rear and side setbacks. So that when it comes to this garage question, what happens if you have a garage that is at 0 property line? You can only make it 1, but you can either demolish the garage or move the walls in. And if you can abide with the 4-foot rear and side setbacks and a 16-foot height, that garage, you can do a 2 ADUs in it as opposed to 1. So that's the kind of calculation you kind of have to make in some of these. For example, when the city planner for the 2 ADUs that I'm doing came back and said, well, part of your ADU is not legal, and she was basically, you have to move it in, you have to move the sidewall in around 2 inches or so you could get the 2 ADUs. So those are the things you kind of have to look at. But yeah, 600 square foot ADU. If it's and you can even add to that and add a second story if it's single family and you have enough RFA. But you can do a 1 bedroom, 600 square feet, easy.
Very good. Thank you for that question, Roman. Anybody else have any questions?
I actually see something I was going to ask earlier. I see people that they'll take their 400 square foot garage and they'll build up. Is that more expensive? Is there any other reasoning besides maybe not enough space if there's no height restriction?
So a couple of things that come out into play with that is that, yes, it's going to be more expensive because remember, you have to put posts down and then you have to reinforce the foundation where that's coming. You're going to have to bring in an engineer because it's a 2-story. You can't get away with, so there's something called the WPFF, and it's wood frame, it's wood frame prescriptive measures or something like that, which means that it actually shows you how to engineer pretty much a square or an L-shaped single-story wood construction home, which architects and even lay people can use to actually put in and do their plans to get it accepted by the city, even in earthquake country. Moment you go up to second story, you can't do WPFF. The moment you have a hip roof, you can't do WPFF. If you're putting in beams, you can't do a WPFF. You have to go with an engineer. So then, yes, you have to do a second story. And then ideally also, when it comes to, if you're trying to max square footage, you should do an exposed stair because that doesn't count to square footage in single family zoning. But it is a little, if you're going to go with a second story, I would suggest going bigger, because if you have 400 square feet and you do a second story 400 square foot studio, you're spending a lot of money to just get that square footage. You might as well, I'm doing a project in Sherman Oaks, where what they're doing is they're keeping the garage, adding 200 square feet on the bottom, and then a 600 square foot 1 bedroom above. And then the other thing is also power lines. So when I talk to LADWP, they're like single story ADUs with 10 feet within the easement, 99.9% of them will get approved. But if you're going up 2 stories, what we're doing now is if we have an easement and we got to go up 2 stories, we actually do a preliminary section and plan and send that into LADWP before we even design, because you don't want to do this whole design and get into the city and then they come back 2 months later and saying you can't do 2 stories. So I have like 2 projects that we're doing it in that way for. So you just got to be careful when you're going up 2 stories.
So the moral to the story is you got to call an expert like Victor just to be on the safe side when there's any type of potential complication or creativity to any kind of build, because that's where they get you. You know, you invest money, you even break ground sometimes, and inspector shows up or DWP shows up and changes the game. If there are no other questions, I know we went 20 minutes over, but it's very valuable information. I also noticed Chantal posted an opportunity in the chat, so make sure you guys check that out. But is there any final questions? Anybody want to ask a final question before we wrap it? Okay, go ahead.
So I was curious about enclosed patios and what you know about that as far as permits goes. Do you need permits to expand on your square footage if you enclose your patio?
So you're saying you want to enclose the existing patio into habitable space?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you need permit anytime you're doing that. So
Right.
you're creating habitable space. So especially if you're doing a bedroom, you're adding a bedroom. They won't count it unless you, because remember, they're looking at code. They want to make sure you're putting in a smoke detector. They want to make sure you're putting in the enclosed patios probably don't have the 1 foot deep footing. So yeah, anytime you're converting anything, remember, garage is already permitted, but when you're making it habitable space and enclosed space, then yes, you have to go through a permit. And then another thing that I want to kind of bring up that just came up at the last minute, half of the conversion cost, almost half of what the conversion costs come in is utilities. So whenever you're looking to convert or do an ADU, just remember, you have to run a new sewer line downstream of the home. You will have to put in a new panel, and LADWP now only wants one drop. So they'll choose what drop to put it in, sometimes on the ADU, and you got to put your panels coming out of that way. Depending, you got to make the decision as to whether you want a new electrical meter or not, because you have the option. You definitely have to do a panel, but not an electrical meter, because a lot of people want to do electrical meters now, because if you're renting it out, you're not having to either give them free electricity or figure out how much electricity you used. So, and then, yeah, definitely you have to run gas. Ideally, you want to run gas. You can use electrical appliances, but you might not make Title 24 energy calculations. So you're going to have to make up that money somewhere else. And yeah, you need to hook up water. And, you know, depending on the property and multifamilies, you're adding a unit. So sometimes that'll even affect your water connection down the street. So, yeah, all these kind of things that you need to really think about, and understand that that's going to be an issue, because sometimes what happens is people go at it, they're like, oh, I can just come in and enclose something with drywall and then that's it, and that's only a couple of $1,000s. But no, the moment you start putting in an ADU, and then that's the other thing, one last thing, because I know I keep on talking about these things, but if you just want to add square footages and add a bedroom, don't do an ADU. An ADU is an actual legal definition, which means you have to do a bathroom and you have to do a kitchen and you have to connect all these utilities. So only do it if you're looking for that extra unit. Don't do it if you're like, oh, I just need a game room, because you could get away with a game room pretty easily. So yeah, just be mindful of exactly what it is, and understand that there's these complex kind of things, and take that into account with your costs.
Very good. Very good. Well, on that note, I want to go ahead and Victor, thank you. We went over, but it was totally worth it because there was a lot of valuable information. So I want to thank you for taking the time to sharing with us. For everybody
Appreciate that,
else
Victor.
for joining, you know, every week, same place, same time. Victor, I want to definitely connect with you offline. I have a tool that we need to talk about with regards to the builders and everything else that you mentioned in the show.
Actually, definitely, but before we hang up, I wanna do what we did last time with the fixers. I just want to mention a couple. If anyone's interested, these are things that are just completely off market. It's stuff that you're really only going to hear here. We've got a 20,000 square foot flat lot in Walnut Acres with plans for a 4,500 square foot house. If you have a client, if you're looking for something, it's in prime Walnut Acres. It's only 965,000. Fantastic deal. And we also have a Brentwood fixer for 2.7. It's probably worth close to 4 million with an addition. I'm happy to go over the underwriting and how we got to these prices with the comps and all that good stuff. Happy to do that. Reach out to me, Chuck at lafixers.com, or you can go to lafixers.com and see some of our inventory. And last but not least, I want to plug Los Angeles Real Estate Investors Club that teamed up with us. They're doing meetings for wholesale deals and things like that. They've got something coming up November 12th. If you want to join their thing. They've got an amazing thing of how to find wholesale deals. Go to lareic.com. And yeah, and we're hoping to have someone from there, someone who's showing up on their podcast, on their meeting with us in the next couple of weeks, also talking about wholesale deals, how to find them, how to cultivate them, things like that. So on that note, we definitely went over, but I want to thank you, and I want to thank everybody that joined, and we'll see you again next Thursday at 2.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.